All right, I think I got this thing hooked up. And I see my slides. We're off to the races. So, hi everybody. My name is Erik Frederiksen. I am the Chief Technology Officer at NC Smart Call. We're a small company in Saskatoon, 10 people now. We're an offshoot of Noodlecake Studios. We were previously called NC Consulting, but we decided since we haven't done any consulting work in a few years, we better change that up. So you're welcome to keep asking, but I'm probably going to keep saying no. So thanks anyway. This is a picture of all of our lovely team. We had an enterprising young summer student join us this year who's gone back to university, but we thought we'd put his face up here already, or as well. But this question mark in the bottom right, that could be you. If you're a smart person and passionate about technology, we'd be happy to talk to you. So we have built a platform called NC Smart Call. It's a absence notification system for unfilled shifts for healthcare employees. So that's being used by the Saskatoon Health Region and Northern Health in Northern BC. And they also use it for doing all their annual vacation and general leave requests, among many other things. So that keeps us pretty busy and keeps me, at-risk engineer off the streets at night. So the question today, big philosophical question for the ages, will it scale? We're going to talk about that a little bit, and we'll try to keep it down to a tight 45. So scalability, as I define it, this is entirely on me, the degree to which a system can respond to increased load without suffering performance degradation or outage. So this is basically, as new users show up, new traffic shows up, how are you going to deal with it? We've all heard of the slashdot effect, where your tiny little blog writes something good and slashdot discovers it and your website falls down or starts on fire or something. So that's no good. So there's lots of bottlenecks though. As technical people, we tend to think about these things in terms of software and systems, but there's a lot of different systems. So just having your website up, that's good. We should do that. Uptime's all right. But if you double your user base or triple it or go up by a factor of 10, what's going to happen there? And then also your business systems. How do they accommodate all this new traffic and these new customers? So how do you onboard them? How do you support the existing ones? Because they need time and care and attention as well. And then with your development processes, how do you manage all the complexity in the systems you build, your source code management, your deployment, and then all the technical debt that tends to get accrued. So I'd just quickly like to go through the conventional B2C startup, business to consumer. This is kind of a Hacker News sort of thing. You're talking about Airbnb, you're talking about Facebook for your dog, all these small startups. And the idea is that they can kind of go viral, get a lot of users, get a lot of traction, get your TechCrunch article, and start growing fantastically, because there's a really low cost for adding each new employee, each new user. So if somebody new joins Reddit, they don't have to provision a new server, they don't have to ask anybody to email them. It's all automated. New users are no big deal. And typically they just have one site. So there's one Reddit, there's one Airbnb, as far as we know anyway, and everybody uses the same one. So when you're starting off, this kind of thing lives on your laptop. You got your nice little internet quasi 3D thing going on here, going into your app server, going into your database. So that's great. Maybe you got some users, a couple hundred. Your site's up and operational. So now somebody discovers you. Huffington Post writes an article about you. Alec Baldwin really likes you. So now we got to vertically scale. So we, if we're using a cloud service, we turn up the knob, we get a bunch of new CPUs, get a bunch of new RAM, sorts of stuff, get a new database server, split them apart, that sort of thing. But at some point, this is untenable. The computers can only get so big. And so now we start thinking about horizontal scaling. So this is starting to get pretty complicated, but this is where you end up if you're Reddit, if you're Airbnb, you go to airbnb.ca or .com and you go to one of these web servers and one of these databases, and it's all transparent to you. You have no idea how you got there. But this is all happening in the background. So they can add more of these app servers and more of these databases in the pool. It should be pretty familiar, I think, to all you guys at Vendasta, some of this big scaling stuff. However, and I guess to the previous point, you're going to the same system. So there's one code base generally, and code moves from develop to master to release using Git flow. And Git flow is kind of a development method that's been come up with in the last couple of years that seems to have gotten some real traction. You do your features in a new branch, you do a bunch of testing on them, get your peers to review them, and they go in. And then your deployments kind of move from a QA environment to staging to prod, and you know, it works out. This is horribly simplified, but I think you get the idea. Now, unfortunately, this kind of thing doesn't work for NC Smart Call. We don't have a lot of customers. We have 3 customers, and one of them is not very big. However, the 2 big ones, the Saskatoon Health Region has a budget of over $1 billion every year and has about like 15,000 employees, and they're all using the system. And our customers also have some pretty different and diverging needs. They all do things differently. They have a different way of scheduling, different ways of accommodating people. And as well, privacy is a major concern in healthcare. So we can't, under any circumstances, let Northern Health data contaminate Saskatoon Health Region data. It's just bad. I don't even want to think about what that future looks like. And then as well, we work closely with our customers. We do this tight feedback loop during development. They have staging servers set up, and we work with them so we can be turning around features every day or a couple days, and they can see the progress the whole time. One challenge is they have extreme organizational inertia. These are huge companies. They have big IT departments, and any feature we want to roll out you know, is going to require employee communication. It's probably going to need training. It's going to need posters and pamphlets and an email, and it needs to be synchronized with the big IT department. So what we've done to address this is we've basically given everybody their own server. And this does a couple things. There's no way that data can cross-contaminate. Saskatoon's data and Northern's are entirely different. There's just no way for them to get anywhere near each other. And as well, because we do this tight feedback loop, we can do things like give them their own kind of staging sub-server or FreeBSD jail to where they can test things and look at these features in an isolated way and not affect their production data. So if there's an issue or anything we need to adjust, we can do it there. So we end up with a system where basically, you know, the internet comes in and goes to the appropriate server. So each one of these is just a single FreeBSD server split into multiple jails, and so far has worked out pretty well. The jails are isolated from each other, and the servers are entirely isolated from one another. And as well, because of the extreme organizational inertia, because it's difficult just to like roll out a feature whenever we feel like it, we've come up with a system whereby each release is named with an alphabetical name for cities. We've got Anchorage, Brisbane, Cork, Dubrovnik, Essen. And originally, Brennan Rauert suggested that we use Pokemon names. That was vetoed. But we did agree that S was for Snorlax. So we've got that coming up next. I'm very excited. But each release also has its own Git flow. So if you're working on Anchorage, you start with Anchorage develop, and then it'll go to the QA and then go to release. If we're in that staging or in that feedback loop with our customers, you're doing that on the QA branch. We need to make sure that the changes you make there go back to develop and then eventually make it up to the release. And then releases for emergency hotfixes. So we're kind of at this place where we've got a lot of branches, we've got a lot of servers. It's getting complicated. It's tough to keep track of what's going on. So it's come to the point where we've started building our own software to help us build software for other people. So our enterprising young summer student, Joel, did a great job of building us a service called Doozer. So we name all of our projects internally with characters from Fraggle Rock. And we were getting to the point where it was difficult for developers to know which branch they should be merging to and whether bug fixes were moving around properly. But it was worse for support staff because you know, Git is hard for developers, and it's just a non-starter for anybody else. So we came up with a system to help us manage that. So a couple screenshots here. With this one here, you can kind of see that the Northern Health staging server. You can see the most recent deployments. If you unfold those, you can see what features got merged. These are all pull requests, and they link to our card system. And so one of our support staff can, Kyle can look at this and say, hey, the next time we update staging, these are the 10 feet or 40 pending features that are going to come with that. He can edit the change logs and he can kick out a nice release notes email to help him do that. And then the next time that this happens, when it's part of a bigger release, those release notes will still exist. And then for developers, we've got this whole thing where we can see, similar to Git flow, code moving from develop to QA to release, and then which features are in and not, in QA but not in develop, or in release and not in QA. And then between releases, we can see which features are in prog and need to go to keto, and which ones are in keto and need to go to Rome. So these kind of things help us out. The visual tools have been really, really good. So ultimately, the way that we scale, the trickiness that we have in scale is less about the number of users we have, because we know how many users we have. There's 15,000 employees in the health region, and nobody's just going to read about our site on Dig and start using it. You can't. You need to be an employee. So we know how many users we have. We know about how much or how many resources they're going to consume. But the tricky part for us is complexity. We need to find a way to manage all of this complexity. And it's tempting when we start doing this stuff to say, we're problem solvers, we're smart people. We put together a great group of really intelligent people. But maybe writing code isn't the answer. In fact, a lot of times it's not. And the further along I get in my career, the more code I've had to maintain, the more I like to solve problems with phone calls and meetings, unfortunately, but solving problems with a well thought out policy where we can say, here are the ground rules and the boundaries for our customers, and say, this is how we develop software, and the things that you want to do, we can do that, but we're not pushing your random feature to prod on Friday afternoon. It doesn't happen. It's not possible. So ultimately, will it scale? This process, for now, hopefully, we've been using it for about 6 months. A lot of the other approaches we had were pretty ad hoc. But we've got a process here that seems to be working pretty well for us. And sometimes I ask myself, is this as simple as it could possibly be? No, I bounce around on it. Sometimes it seems way too complicated. But it does cover our major use cases with our customers. This quick turnaround that we do with them and develop, that's a feature, not a bug. We can do things for them that in short order that most companies can't, and certainly the big vendors that they use are entirely unwilling to do. So this is a pretty big competitive advantage for us. And ultimately, this doesn't have to be our policy for the next 10 years, whatever 10 years looks like in startup time. But this is something that we're going to keep looking at, we're going to keep talking about, we're going to keep improving. We'll hit new bottlenecks. I feel like this will get us to 6 customers, to 8 customers. Will it get us to 15? I don't know. That'll probably be like, a Vendasta size company or something by that time, God willing. But yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And as we hit bottlenecks, we'll keep working on it. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. Thanks to Vendasta for having me.